Okay, in an attempt to showcase her protruding left leg, which seems a little bigger than the legs of the other girls. The dark color of the sweatshirt is juxtaposed against the colorful and bright patterns of the bikinis. The setting is on the beach, which adds, again, urgency, guys. Appeal to kairos, which adds even more emphasis to how out of place the sweatshirt looks. The girls are smiling, which adds irony. Guys, we could link this to irony to the photo, since the readers will soon find out by reading the text that deep inside, she has failed to lose weight and conform to the ideal body type as her friends have. Let's break down the irony real quick. Where is it? Guys, how is this ironic? This is ironic in the dramatic sense. This could be seen as a case of dramatic irony. Do you guys remember dramatic irony? Dramatic irony is where the character does not know, but the reader and the creator of the text has a knowledge of what's going to happen, has a knowledge of something that's not seen in the image. She is smiling, but as you guys know, now that you've seen the text, she's not really smiling, is she? Sang-yeon, do you get that? Why is that smile ironic? Sang-yeon, can you break that down for us?
Isn't she like not supposed to be smiling? She's like the only one that can't wear a bikini.
I mean, there's no such thing as she's not supposed to, but then how, in your knowledge, so something that you know because you've read the text, in your knowledge, how is she genuinely feeling?
Like kind of left out and sad.
Can you elaborate on that a little more? Why?
Like because she's like overweight and then she can't be like her friends.
She can't wear the bikini like her friends are. You know, she had to make the last minute decision to pull out the sweater, which is why she's wearing the sweater. And she's trying to be jovial, right? She's trying to get together with her friends. She's trying to act like she's okay, hence the smile. Guys, let's take a photo, smile. But then inside, how's she feeling? Oh my God, I should have bought Shape earlier so I could drop 5 kilos before I had to take this goddamn photograph, right? Do you guys understand the dramatic irony there? William, you get it? Brian, you get it? Guiding questions. Now, there are largely 2 categories of guiding questions. First category is the type of guiding questions that you'll see at school. So these are school assessments, your term exams, your end of term assessments, everything that goes into your GPA. Now, for school exams, guiding questions are always like the guiding question you're looking at in your homework right now. It's broad. Shall we look at another example? In what ways do image and text come together to convey meaning? It's very broad, right? Again, it doesn't add to your understanding. It doesn't specify anything. Or another example, in what ways is the text written? In what ways? In what ways? This is also always asking about devices. How do image and text? Again, the question is asking, give me devices, right? Now, there are certain ways you can use the guiding question. So, for instance, the guiding question can give you hints in terms of purpose. It could give you hints in terms of the target audience. So, there could be guiding questions that say to entertain the reader. Then, before reading the text itself, you know that entertainment is built into the purpose. Henceforth, you'd probably be looking for elements of humor. You'd be looking for comedic effect before you even read the text. Same for the target audience. If the guiding question says something like, to persuade young children, that word young children should stand out to you like a hint, like a clue. So even before reading the text, going into it, you'd be looking for variations of colors. You'd be looking for word choices that are tailored to young children. It gives you a framework to work through when there are these kind of hints that are given in the guiding question. Now, so far, these are your school exams, okay? Now, I know some of you may be applying to schools in Singapore, Korea, or the UK, in which case your final exam, your IBO exam, will matter quite a bit. Now, IBO always gives at least one difficult guiding question. What that means is for the IBO exam, you'll be given two texts. You'll be given text A and text B. Now, out of text A and text B, there will always be one challenging guiding question. One of them will be challenging. Now, if you are taking IB at a SL level, it doesn't matter because you could read the guiding questions. And if you're SL, you're given the freedom to only write one. You select one. So if you see that challenging guiding question, that's fine. Just don't write about it. Just skip it and stick to the guiding question that looks easy and familiar. However, if you're taking IB language and literature at HL level, you're not given the freedom to choose. You will have to write about both texts and you will have to deal with both guiding questions, whether the guiding question is challenging or not. You don't have a choice. So let's take a look at those challenging guiding questions and see the difference, shall we? Let's focus on B first. In what way are narrative techniques used to explore the notion of intercultural communication? Junyoung, do you notice the difference between the category 1 and category 2? Do you see the difference? Junyoung, you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think the difference is?
The second is like more specific, maybe.
In what way is it more specific?
It's like directly asking us to analyze the narrative techniques.
A particular device, right? So in the school exam, this would just be image and text. Or even better, it would say something like, oh, how does the overall text? It will not specify. It will give you guys the freedom to choose what device you want to write about. However, these challenging IBO exams will actually pinpoint, I want you to write about narrative techniques. What that means is when you write your body paragraphs, you do have to write about narrative techniques. You don't get to write about color. You don't get to write about metaphors. You do have to talk about narrative techniques. This is also very specific, guys. Intercultural communication. I've slightly modified the actual IBO exam because I think in the actual IBO exam, it had to do with issues regarding one's identity. Now, this is challenging because when you see the text itself, it doesn't use the word identity at all. What that means is it's up to your interpretation to see how this text has anything to do with identity. The same goes for the first question. How does the author create an impression of Chinese culture? Or I think it said the original IBO exam was about Indian culture. And if you look at the question alone, just the way the question is written, you think, I mean, I don't see what's so, challenging about that question. It was very challenging. The reason is this text had nothing to do with Indian culture. It had to do with a dish called tandoori, and it talked about the history of tandoori. What that means is it presumes that the student knows that tandoori is an Indian dish, and it wants the student to actively create the connection between Indian culture and this particular dish that the text is all about. When my students walked in for the exam that year, this is the text that all of the SL students skipped over. They did not want to write about this because they couldn't understand the guiding question to begin with. It's only the HL students who had to deal with that question. I think half of my HL students were, I think they managed to create that connection. And in the intro, they said cuisine, something along the lines of like food is an essential component of culture. And then they created that connection. I think for the other HL students, they really, really struggled with that question. But lucky for you, this we will only deal with later, right? This is a later issue. These are the type of questions that you want to acquaint yourself with right now, because as I've said several times, paper ones will be the first assessment that you will face when you start IB. Now, let's quickly go to asyndeton, polysyndeton, and cumulative sentences. Now, asyndeton is when a sentence is written without conjunctions. So asyndeton and polysyndeton all have to do with conjunctions. What are conjunctions? They are words like and, but, and so. A as in the absence, A means there are no conjunctions. So when I list, I would list like this. James, Sarah, Julie, and so on, without conjunctions. Now, polysyndeton, as you could assume from the word poly, means there are so many conjunctions. There are many, many. So that would be James and Sarah and something and something. Now, if I put it like this, it doesn't look like much of a device. It looks like the world's stupidest device, but I promise it's not. Let's take a look at this line here. Let's read this together, guys. For the most part, they carried themselves with poise, a kind of dignity. Now, this is from The Things They Carried, a novel about, well, somewhat autobiographical novel written by a man called Tim O'Brien. A lot of guys cover this for their IB. Okay, so the soldiers carried themselves with poise, a kind of dignity. Now and then, however, there were times of panic when they squealed or wanted to squeal but couldn't, when they twitched and made moaning sounds and covered their heads and said, "Dear Jesus," and flopped around on the earth and fired their weapon blindly and cringed and sobbed and begged for the noise to stop and went wild and made stupid promises to themselves and to God and to their mothers and fathers, hoping not to die. That was one hell of a mouthful, because the sentence, guys, I'm not sure if you noticed, the sentence began here and it ended there. Now, do you notice the repetition of conjunctions? Let's start to list them. So when they switched and made moaning sounds and covered their heads and said, "Dear Jesus," and flopped around and fired and cringed and sobbed and begged for the noise and went and. Now, Sangyeon, what do you think is the effect of that? How did you feel reading that sentence?
I feel like tired and like restless. It's a kind of hard to read.
So tired, so tired. Yeah. Charlotte, anything else?
I felt desperate, like
Desperate.
and panic.
Desperate. And you feel panicked. Let's combine to the desperation and the fatigue that's felt there. Did you feel like it's never going to end? Like it just won't stop. Like, stop already, right? And that's usually what that sentence does. Let me give you another example. Okay, now listen very, very carefully, because I'm going to do this orally. Okay, I'm going to give you two sentences. Listen carefully and pick up the differences. Sentence number one: as soon as the soldiers arrived, they killed my mother, father, brother, and sister. Sentence number two: as soon as the soldiers arrived, they killed my mother and father and brother and sister. Alex, what do you think is the difference? So in that case, what I did is, so these are the people who died, right? The grammatically correct way would be father, mother, brother, and sister. That was my first sentence. In the second sentence, what I did was I separated them with polysyndeton. I said mother and father and brother and sister. Did you notice that the conjunctions punctuate the sentence? It's like a beat, right? Like a background beat. And with that background beat, by dropping the word "and," each time I am drawing attention to every item that I mentioned in the list. In a sense, I'm drawing more attention to each individual victim. Whereas the kind of effect that asyndeton has is it flows. So you'll notice asyndeton used a lot in poetry, where lists need to flow, without interruption. Whereas the contrasting effect with polysynthesis is that it's interrupted, interrupted, interrupted. Do you see what I mean? And. And those interruptions in the sentence has an effect of drawing attention to each item. Another effect it has, going back to the sentence that we were looking at, is that it deliberately elongates the sentence, makes a sentence long, which is why we look at a sentence like that and we go, oh God, I'm so tired. I'm just so exhausted. I wish it would end already, because it's so unnecessarily long. It doesn't have to be that long, right? And these things have to do with pacing. What kind of a pace do you create in your sentence? Another thing I wanted to draw your attention to is, don't you think this writing is going straight to the quote itself, attacking the quote, dissecting the quote, really trying to comment on what is going in the, what is happening in the quote, thus answering the question, how is the quote doing what it is doing? Whereas if you go back to the original student's writing, this sentence right here, it answers the question of what is the quote is showing. Do you guys see that difference? So here the student is, in other words, interpreting what that quote means on your behalf. It's kind of like saying, oh, in case you didn't catch it, or in case you didn't understand it, let me just break down what it means, what it means, what. But then if you go down here, the approach is closer to how it is written. That's the key difference. That's going to differentiate what is good analysis and what is less good analysis. I got a little extract here from one of my favorite writers. Oh, and what I did is I copy pasted a paragraph that does a very good job in analyzing tone. Why don't we take a look at this together? So Dickens establishes, look at the verbs used, establishes a grimly oppressive tone, right? So what I want you guys to pay attention to is how this analysis is done by consistently identifying what tone, what's going on in terms of the tone, as opposed to just simply saying tone is used, or this is a tone, right? So here we find a grimly oppressive tone, which evokes a sense. The verb evoke is massively helpful for all you guys, because evoke goes with any kind of feeling. It goes with any kind of sensation. So it evokes a sense of confinement and suffocation through his description of Coketown's industrial core. Coketown is a fictional town that shows up in Charles Dickens' novel called Hard Times. Now, the relentlessly claustrophobic tone. What does relentless mean? It means it won't stop, keeps going. It's very negative too. If something is relentless, it's kind of like your mom's 잔소리. It's not like and then it stops. It kind of just goes on and on and on in waves, right? That's relentless. The relentlessly claustrophobic tone, you feel trapped, emerges in phrases like, and this is where cue direct quotes. These would be the quotes from your text, right? Innermost fortifications, narrow courts upon courts, and close streets upon streets. So in these quotes, you find a relentlessly claustrophobic tone, which suggests a labyrinthine, inescapable environment. So it's like a maze. Oops, it's like a maze and it's inescapable. The mechanically impersonal tone. The mechanically impersonal tone. What kind of a tone would that be? Aaron, can you imagine what kind of a tone that would be?
I'm not sure.
Mhm. Have you guys ever talked to Siri before?
Yes.
There you go. That's your mechanically impersonal tone. Or I think AI these days try to sound a little more chipper. I think they do add a little bit of bounce to the voice. But if you look at early AI models where it's monotone, it's flat, and there is no emotion or no personal opinion embedded in the voice, that would be mechanically impersonal. Okay, the mechanically impersonal tone is further dehumanizes the town's inhabitants, particularly in reference to the hands, a metonymy that strips workers of individuality, reducing them to mere appendages of labor. We're going to talk about metonymy a little later on. A bitterly ironic tone punctuates the passage, as Dickens describes how these workers would have found more favor if they were nothing but hands and stomachs, exposing the exploitative mindset of industrial capitalism. The accumulation of oppressive imagery cultivates a stifling, almost dystopian mood. This is important. We'll come back to that in a bit. Immersing the reader in an atmosphere of entrapment, dehumanization, exhaustion, reinforcing Coketown as a symbol of industrial brutality. Now, what I want to focus on here is the way these different tones. Do you guys see these tones? As these tones build, different tones build up, what they will eventually result in is a certain mood and a certain atmosphere. Do you guys see that? Because atmosphere or mood in Korean, it's like 분위기. It's something that is in the air. It's not something that you could, point your finger at, there it is. You don't say, yes, this is the atmosphere. Atmosphere is intangible. Atmosphere is invisible. And yet it is something that you definitely feel. So for instance, I don't know, if something happened in class right now and the mood suddenly shifted, and you would pick that up with visual cues, or sometimes in person-to-person conversation, you would figure that out through non-visible cues. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're talking to your mom and then suddenly something shifts and you're like, oh shit, okay, now's the time to shut my mouth. Those kind of moments occur because you're always tuning in on what's happening with the atmosphere, with the mood. And that will always be found in any piece of writing. That's why tone, mood, atmosphere is the one component that you will definitely find in every single text type, in literature, in non-literature, in any existing text. There will always be something to be said about tone. And this is how you would analyze tone.